How's it going, everyone, and welcome to the All-Stars Entertainment Podcast Award Show 2023. I am your co-host, Brian, with
your other co-host, Colin, and it's a pleasure to be here with you, Brian, looking at the best and worst of 2022 in the realm of filmmaking.
Yeah, we saw a pretty good variety of decent or okay films this year. It wasn't too disappointing, unlike 2021.
Absolutely. I mean, there were a lot of good movies. I mean, I saw about 53 movies this year in theaters. Most of those I saw with you. And a lot of good memorable ones here, for sure. And also ones that I'd like to forget, which we'll get into, of course.
Oh, yeah. We'll talk about the good and the bad and the in-between.
Absolutely.
Which, in review for this list, we found there was a pretty decent amount of in-betweens.
Yeah, absolutely. But there are also a lot of good ones. A lot of ones I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And, some of my top 5 movies were Father Stew, Terrifier 2, The Banshees of Inisherin, Top Gun Maverick, and X. A lot of my favorites there. I'd say Father Stew definitely a top in terms of enjoyment level. And, X was around like an 8, 8.5 for me. So, but what about you? Got any favorites you want to throw out there?
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to the Top Gun Maverick podcast we did, be no surprise, that was one of my enjoyed movies of this year. Father Stew as well for me. Glass Onion was great. Bullet Train and Dog are that's probably my top 5 most enjoyed films of this year.
Lit. Right, and so just to refresh you, the basis of this award show is based off your remote control featuring like the play, the pause, the stop button, fast forward, so on and so forth. So let's get into the Play Award here. This is for Best Cinematography. And Brian, I like to give this award to Claudio Miranda, who did the cinematography for Top Gun Maverick. You might recognize his work from Life of Pi or The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and I'll get more into why I think he deserves this award, but what are your choices?
Yeah, so I also went with Top Gun Maverick. It was just great all around in terms of how you really felt and it got to experience what it was to be a Navy aviator, and beyond that, when they did the flight tests in the very, very beginning with the SR-71 Blackbird, also known as the Dark Star, I feel like you just really got to experience Maverick and the rest of the pilots in the movie. You really got to feel what they were feeling. You got to feel the adrenaline rush. You got a good sense of the G-forces that they were trying to portray, which I imagine is very tough to do.
Oh, for sure.
So I'm in agreement with you. I think it was fantastic.
Yeah, and also to quickly add on to that beginning scene, I really just enjoyed the one particular shot where it's just Maverick inside the jet. You've got the dark space on both sides of the frame, right? And I think that shows that Maverick's in the process of aging and trying to figure out what's next for him in life and what's coming next. They say he's the fastest man alive, but whether he should continue to live his life on the fast lane or maybe just slow it down and take life day by day, I think that's a really good motif and something that I think a lot of people could have potentially missed. And I think it's a really crucial part of this film.
Right. And I'm this might be more about Tom Cruise than the cinematography of it, but I really enjoyed when he was up in the plane and it was quiet and he had that moment where he's looking out over to Earth and the clouds and said, "Talk to me, Goose." I felt like that was just like a real moment, and again, helps you kind of feel what he was feeling in that moment.
Right, I think that really does also come down to cinematography as well, because it just draws you right into that story, draws you right into that moment.
Yeah.
And that's beautifully well done by, again, Claudio Miranda, who did that movie as well. So I guess we're in agreement on that one as well, and I wonder how much more of you will be on Top Gun Maverick as well, because I know that's probably your favorite movie of all time, as you've said repeatedly over and over again this year.
We'll get to that.
Absolutely.
Speaking of getting to, we'll get to the next award, which is the Volume Up Award, and that is for Best Music. So for this one, I went with Thor: Love and Thunder.
Really?
Yes. More or less, it felt like a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. And I just love the music selection that they have in Guardians of the Galaxy, and I like the music selection in this. Not so much score-wise, but it did have a good atmosphere set, but like Guns N' Roses,
Sure.
I mean all that stuff, that 80s, 90s stuff, I loved it.
Absolutely. And you're definitely a big 80s music listener as well,
Yes.
whether it be like hard rock, metal, even country music as well.
Oh, as soon as we saw the trailer with Sweet Child of Mine, I said, I'm there.
Yeah,
And like we're pretty much done with Disney, but we saw that trailer and I said, I'm there.
he's there. He's all in. So, listener, this award is music. So that could be soundtrack like Brian did, or you can go the route I did, and I chose a score. A movie that came out in December was from Damien Chazelle, a movie called Babylon. Justin Hurwitz did the score. He also did Whiplash and La La Land, First Man as well. So he works a lot with Damien Chazelle. And when I tell you Justin Hurwitz crafted a beautiful score that represented old Hollywood and new Hollywood, let me just tell you something. It's fantastic. It's really well put together. There's that nice dichotomy that the film also tries to showcase, and I think Justin really hits it nicely. That dichotomy of what does it mean to kind of like live old but also be in the new? Because this film really traces the silent film era to the sound era of filmmaking, and it's really well put together. I mean, I could talk on and on all day about Babylon, but I definitely think this one is going to win some major awards at the Oscars awards and also the Golden Globes as well. So we're looking forward to see what this film does.
Awesome. So. Yeah. I know that was one of the ones you recommended me check out, which unfortunately it wasn't in theaters when I did get to see it, but
yeah, it wasn't in theaters too long, but it was also a 3-hour movie, so I think that might have deterred a lot of people as well.
But it also came out around like Black Panther and other things that they want in the theaters longer.
Right,
so
Black Panther competed with Avatar,
yeah,
as well. Also, speaking of Damien Chazelle, who's a director, I want to move into the Power Award, which is Best Director. But Brian, I want to hear your take first.
All right. So my best director this year was Rian Johnson.
Really?
Yes.
I'm surprised by that, honestly.
I know. And I really thought about this one a lot. But when I look back on it, and this is Rian Johnson for Glass Onion. Glass Onion was one of my movies that I watched on a whim and really, really enjoyed. Was caught off guard by how much I enjoyed it. And, boy, I mean, Rian Johnson, I thought, did a great job. He had a great cast. I felt like I watched a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff with Rian Johnson interacting with the cast, and that's another big part of why I chose him as Best Director. I thought he had a great rapport with everybody, and it was just a fun... It felt, to me, what it looked like a fun movie set to be on.
For sure, yeah. And especially as you talk about the actors, there's just a way that I don't know how he does it. I've watched numerous of his movies, and I can't quite figure out, but there's just the way he takes people that really shouldn't seem like they go together as actors, and it's like a master class of acting on screen. I don't know how he does it. I really can't figure it out.
I don't know. I mean, he had a loaded cast. I mean,
Yeah.
you think of Daniel Craig, Kate Hudson, you had Dave Bautista on there, and others that are just... It was just amazing that he made all of those people who, I don't know, I don't want to say shouldn't mesh well, but they all meshed very well together. They all fit the characters they were cast to be, and yeah, I just think Rian Johnson knocked that out of the park this year.
For sure. And a side note too, I was listening to another podcast called Smartless, and they had Rian Johnson on there, and it's hosted by, I believe it's Will Arnett, Sean Hayes, and Jason Bateman. And there was this little segment they did about how Rian Johnson works on a set and everything, and he's got a lot of his childhood friends who he made homemade movies with growing up, literally on the set working with him. So I think that also lends itself too as to how a set kind of just seems like it's so fun to be around, because it's just like that camaraderie is right there, and I think that's really what makes wonderful direction happen.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like watching those behind the scenes and stuff, it gave... It's a weird comparison to make, but it gave like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia vibes.
Oh, for sure.
Like childhood friends are all just hanging out and just, shooting a film or TV or whatever.
Yeah.
It was just amazing to watch. Yeah, so Rian Johnson for Glass Onion specifically for me. But what is your best director this year, Colin?
So my best director, this is a hot take, and I know it is a hot take, but I'm going to go with David Cronenberg, who did Crimes of the Future. If you don't know who David Cronenberg is, he's definitely a very experimental horror director. A lot of body horror, thriller films that he's made. If you're familiar with the film Videodrome, he did that as well. David Cronenberg just has a way of taking a very simplistic concept and just kind of extrapolating it and making all these different wild elements run right together. The Crimes of the Future is definitely a body horror film where we're talking about what does it mean if you change your body, and does it make you still human? Does it make you more android? How does that kind of all work together? And one of the things David Cronenberg meshes well together in this movie is, first off, practical effects with visual effects, and it's just a masterclass art and really just using your canvas to the maximum potential, whether that be with the effects, with the sound, with that be acting, editing as well. It really just comes together nicely. Honestly, one of my favorite films of the year is Crimes of the Future, in terms of the technical element. So, David Cronenberg for me. I'll always be a Cronenberg head. Probably till the day I die, honestly. Dude can't make a bad movie, in my opinion.
There you go, man. Awesome. So moving on, we get into the Settings Award, which is for Best Editing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll kick this off with a back-to-back, because this one is Glass Onion again.
Really?
Yes. I love the editing done in this film. They did a great job of showing scenes and then going back and showing more of those scenes, or going back in time to explain what happened in that scene further. And I thought that was just fantastic. A lot of films I saw before this, not during this year, but of all time, have tried to do this very unsuccessfully.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt this one just nailed it. And not only was it fantastic, but it made the film better, the story better, which is really what I care about personally.
And what's funny too, if I can quickly add on to that, is that there's just like subtle little hints of the mystery flavored in there that once they go back, you're like, is this relating? Is it? Is it not?
Right.
And it still makes you question, which is also really cool too. And that might also just be on part of Rian Johnson's writing as well. But a lot of that is like subtle, like things they do within the frame that really just kind of makes you think about it. So, definitely Rian Johnson's got a knack for mystery.
Oh yeah, and I mean with the editing of it, everything felt like, I understand why this was put here.
Mm-hmm.
I understand why it was shot this way because of this flashback scene. It all made sense.
Yeah. And that's what kind of irritates me when movies just like have a certain, scene, or just like a little like 15 seconds they could have chopped off a scene, because it just doesn't serve a purpose.
Star Wars, new trilogy.
Minus Rian Johnson's effort. But no, he's got me laughing now. No, but seriously though, I think that Rian Johnson just has a certain knack for making sure if it's going to be in the movie, it's going to serve a purpose. Unlike some other directors who like just throw something in there for the hell of it, more or less. And I don't want to name any names, but I'm sure
the director of Force Awakens.
Yeah, I'm sure you can think of a few names, listener, and we can think of a few names, but I digress here. The point is though, Rian Johnson, I can see that. I'm honestly really baffled by that, because I would have thought you would have went with Top Gun Maverick.
It was in serious consideration.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just figured Glass Onion, with the way, like I said, with the flashbacks,
Mm-hmm.
it was better for me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming your pick is Top Gun Maverick.
It is, and Eddie Hamilton did the editing on that movie. He also did the Mission Impossible series with Tom Cruise as well.
Makes a lot of sense.
It does. It does. Like, Top Gun Maverick kind of feels in the same vein as a Mission Impossible.
Especially that last sequence where they have to do something with a jet. I can't say it without spoilers.
Right, we're not going to spoil it.
Yeah, there's a sequence at the end, and I can understand exactly how this is Mission Impossible-esque.
Yes. And to that point, as we were talking about earlier, the way that the aerial shot sequences were sequenced together are just really impactful. And I think that really makes a difference in really just kind of furthering the cinematography. And I think editing and cinematography really go hand in hand, because if you have great editing, you have an awesome movie. But if you don't have great editing, it's going to fall a little flat. And we all know that we've seen movies where just like, why is the movie dragging on? Why is it, so on and so forth. And I just think Eddie Hamilton has a great way of making sure that you stay within the universe for the allotted amount of time that the movie runs. And I think no film did that better this year than Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Glass Onion, second place. I gotta be honest with you.
Yeah, Glass Onion was like, and I might have had a different opinion had I saw it in the theaters. I watched it at home,
Mm-hmm.
and it might have changed, but just watching it on my TV, I was like, this is great editing. This is the best editing I've seen. And I have watched Top Gun Maverick at home, and I don't know. I might have a different opinion had I saw it in the theater.
I mean, maybe for you, Glass Onion, there's just something that really kind of excites you about that mystery kind of vibe, and how it slowly unfolds in the editing process.
It was very, and this will be a good shout out to, it was a good reminiscence of Shutter Island. with Leonardo
Yes.
DiCaprio. I had a great experience watching that, and maybe that's why. Maybe it kind of shares a lot with that experience. So
yeah,
that might be it.
For sure.
So moving on, we have the Tools Award, which is Best Visual Effects. So Colin, I will let you take the lead on this one.
Well, Brian, I want you to guess. What do you think I'm about to say here?
If you don't say Terrifier 2, I'm leaving.
I'm not going to say Terrifier 2.
All right, I'll see you guys next week on the Pause Podcast.
While yes, Terrifier 2 did have amazing practical visual effects, the makeup department really showed up on one particular occasion for this movie, but I'll talk about that later on down the road. I want to talk about Avatar: The Way of Water.
Okay.
You seem very disappointed. No, I just think that, James Cameron and senior visual effects supervisor Joe Lettieri have had this concept going for the last few years, and they've waited for the technology to get to the point where it can look realistic, but also we're in a fantasy world, if that makes sense. So basically, one of the things I really enjoyed about this movie is that the water and the way that the Na'vi work in the water, damn well that it's fake, but it's also very practical. But also they use a lot of CGI effects within that. So I think what I'm basically trying to say is that there's just a lot of visual effects coming together to create something that is so realistic, and you just really get a sense of what Pandora feels like within that vibe. And I just really appreciate how that they waited for the technology to become available for them to make this, and not just throw a lot of CGI into the mix, such as and I hate to use this example, but I think it's a great example, like the Star Wars prequel trilogy, where you can clearly tell it's a green screen, and for me, green screens really take me right out of the film.
Right.
And with this, I'm not sure if they used the green screen in Avatar. They may have, but
It's probably a blue screen.
I was waiting for the joke. But no, I just really like how they really brought all those elements together, and I just, for me, my eyes never left that screen for 3 hours. In fact, it never really felt like it was a 3 hour long movie. So, I just think they did a really great job, and there were a lot of films, such as you said, like Terrifier 2, that I really enjoyed the visual effects on. But for me, that one stands out just because it's just very impactful that they waited for this technology, such as they did with the first movie. So,
right.
What about you, Brian? I don't know if you're going to say Avatar. Probably not, when you were a little disappointed when I said it.
No. So, I was originally going to go with Top Gun Maverick. But then I thought about it and said, they actually shot a lot of those scenes in the plane.
Yeah.
And that's what would have done it for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, for this one, I went with Doctor Strange 2.
Okay.
I just felt like, and I did this last year, I think with Spider-Man, I might have done best visual effects.
I believe so, yes.
It just, everything looked great. Story, terrible. But everything looked great. Like, when they were in the multiverse, awesome. All the, different universes they traveled to had a great, unique look to it, and obviously it was all not real.
Right.
So I felt like they just made everything look amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Story was very lacking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Marvel always looks good, but underneath it's like, great.
Yeah, you're right. The visual is the visual department always shows up to play whenever they make a movie.
Absolutely. I mean,
the writing team,
not so much. I don't know if that's just because I feel like they're more focused on TV shows at this point, and understandable.
Right.
But I just wish that they would put more into their story, because you think back like the Endgame and stuff. The visual effects, number one. Story, number one. I mean, that was peak Marvel Avengers, because we're technically not in the Avengers anymore. Everything just felt, weird about the story, but I really enjoyed all the effects that they did.
Yeah. I like the one sequence. I know you and I didn't necessarily see the eye to eye in the sequence, but I really liked the sequence where Doctor Strange is fighting the music notes. I liked the aspect of it. I liked how it looked on screen. I know you didn't really like how it looked.
I didn't like the execution. I like the idea of it. I don't know. I'd like to know if there was alternate takes, because I would watch those, and they were probably better, because usually alternate takes tend to be better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know, just something about that scene for me didn't sit right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It does feel a little out of place when you consider that particular sequence as an entire sequence.
Right. I mean, you got Doctor Strange, and it was just weird placement. And I don't know. Maybe it's editing. Maybe that scene wasn't supposed to go there. I don't know. I'm not the director. I don't care.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, on that note, we're gonna get into the best and worst of supporting and actors category.
Yep.
So what we did for this is we kind of split them up. With the green buttons being the best and the red buttons being the worst.
Mm-hmm.
So to lead off, we're going to do the green button for best supporting actor or actress. For me personally, going to be Mel Gibson in Father Stew. I felt like he was amazing in this movie. I'd like to point out my honorable mention for this would have been Elizabeth Olsen, Scarlet Witch. I thought she was great.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just Mel Gibson was awesome. If this was best supporting cast, Glass Onion would have won. But one person, one performance, Mel Gibson in Father Stew for me was just the peak. I really, really enjoyed his performance and how he kind of elevated Mark Wahlberg and everybody else around him in every scene he was in.
Yeah. Mel Gibson and Mark Wahlberg should definitely make more movies in the future because their chemistry is unreal.
Oh, I mean, at times it was amazing how you think of Mel Gibson as like the lead man. Like, you know, you think of The Patriot, you think of Lethal Weapon. He always stole the main role. He was the guy you always focused on. But in this, it was amazing how he just kind of sat back and said, I'm a supporting actor. I'm going to do my best to make Mark Wahlberg's character look good. And you could really see that effort.
Right. And yet, he leaves such an impact that when you think of best supporting, he's one of the first people you think of.
Yeah, this movie was, spoiler, amazing.
Like, we gave this a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, this movie was so good, and I really thought about it, and I said, without Mel Gibson, I don't think this movie is as good. Now, everybody had great performances, and the story was fantastic, but without Mel Gibson's support, I don't know if this movie was as good. Just because he, like I said, he was willing to take a back seat and elevate Mark Wahlberg's character, who was his son in this film, and they do, like you said, have that chemistry, and at times it felt like a father and son, which was amazing to watch.
Right, right. And I also think, too, to add on to your point about Mel Gibson, is that, granted, he's only probably in the movie for maybe like 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, very, very low amount of screen time, but he always makes an impact.
Right, and it's just, I don't know exactly how to phrase it, but there's just a way where you almost get a glimpse into his thought process, and it's a very honest and organic approach to his acting that I really truly appreciate. And I think a lot of people today in the industry take for granted that like honest approach. They just kind of like, they live in the scene, but they're not really living in the scene, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
there's a difference.
100%.
Is that all you got to say about Mel Gibson? Or you want to keep going on and on? Because I know you probably could.
I could, but I will pass it along to you, sir.
All right. So Mel Gibson was somebody I did think of as supporting green for sure. But I'm just going to give this one to somebody we just mentioned, Mark Wahlberg, for his performance as Sully in the movie Uncharted. Now, in this movie, I think Mark Wahlberg really portrays Sully from the video game franchise terrifically. Like, it was just like, I can't say the same for Tom Holland, unfortunately, but I think Mark Wahlberg really understood what his role in this movie was going to be. He was going to kind of be that duality of good and evil, and really just kind of project that. And I think, again, as I was saying about Mel Gibson, there's a really honest and organic approach to Mark Wahlberg's portrayal of Sully in this movie as well. Like, you really, as soon as he's on screen, you get the sense that this isn't going to end well, but I don't know exactly how it was going to end badly for the characters in the movie. And then once Mark Wahlberg makes the switch, it's just, it's really unreal. I can't quite describe it because I just don't know how to put the words together, but there's just something that makes you kind of believe that, you know, this could be somebody in your own life, and like you're just kind of living that moment again as you see it on screen. If that makes sense to you, I don't know if I'm really kind of portraying that correctly.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. And I mean, maybe for me personally, as someone who has played the Uncharted games, I never really thought of Sully as a support. I always thought of him as the antagonist. So maybe that's just me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming
Yeah.
from, 100%.
I think in the way this movie tells a story, because it borrows a lot of inspiration from the games, but also kind of tells its own story. In this instance, Sully is the support, even though he's kind of like antagonist number two. Like when he becomes the antagonist, it's like the C plot of the movie, basically. So that's why I went with supporting, but I don't know. But that's a good thing about film is that it's up to interpretation. It's up to one to really think about it and like, why do you like this? And we've done that on the course of this award show as well, where we've been like, Glass Onion, Top Gun Maverick. It's just like, okay, cool.
Yep, 100%.
So it's like it's kind of cool to see somebody's thought process, basically. But
absolutely,
I would talk about film all day long. So, but unfortunately, we can't do that.
Can't do that.
But I do want to move into the supporting red, because I think I've got a really hot take here for some people.
Oh, me too, man. I tell you what. So with that lead in, I want to hear your hot take. So what do you got?
All right, so I've got somebody by the name of Scott Mescudi, also known as Kid Cudi, for his portrayal as Jackson Hole in the film X. And for those that don't know what the synopsis of X is, it takes place in the 1970s, and given the title of the film, they're making an X-rated film as a backdrop, but it's really a horror thriller film. And in making of this X film, Kid Cudi, I understand those films are like awkward. I get it. I understand that was the concept here, but man, he just really feels awkward. Like he didn't know what he was doing based off the looks of the film, and he just looked like he didn't really want to be there. Didn't understand what his motivation was, and it just wasn't organic. I didn't enjoy his portrayal. I think they could find something better for him. I don't know. Maybe he should stick to rapping. I guess he's a rapper. I don't know. But man, it wasn't great. Aside from that, though, I really enjoyed the movie. But man,
his performance.
Thank God he's only in the movie for about like 10, 15 minutes tops, because it's like, I don't know, like those scenes are really hard to watch.
Right.
It really just is. I can't go more in depth on that without really spoiling the overall genesis of the film. So I don't really want to do that. So
all right, shout out to Phil Collins.
Big facts, dude. But yeah, Kid Cudi. That's my supporting red. Other than that, enjoy X. Brian, you have the floor.
Yeah, all right. So mine is, and I apologize, Xochitl Gomez. It's probably not right. I apologize. But you played American Chavez in Doctor Strange, and you were not good. So that's pretty self-explanatory. I didn't enjoy your performance. You brought little to nothing to the film, and I don't know. I just didn't like. This is this year's Ned for me. I didn't like Ned this year. I don't like Chavez this year. So yeah, that's about it. I have literally nothing positive to say. Anyway,
yeah.
I don't know. We're gonna move on.
It just wasn't a good performance.
No, it wasn't. I'm really trying to think about something that I enjoyed, like the arc or the storytelling. There's nothing. There's just nothing.
I think that's my issue with Kid Cudi. Is just like it's just awkward. It's not a good performance.
No,
the concept is there. Execution, not.
Is it there? I mean, literally.
In my case, it is. I don't know about yours.
Because this feels like Ned 2.0. He was in Spider-Man for like one reason. Mm-hmm. He had the ring and he was like a sorcerer. Made no mention of it. Doctor Strange came out and was like, you can do that. Cool. Right. Done. Forget about it. Literally, that's all she does is teleport him. He can teleport himself. He's a big boy. So, I don't get it. I didn't like it. I get that it was meant to like wrap up the Scarlet Witch thing. But like, no, dude. Right. Just no. I didn't like it.
I mean, here's what I'll give for like some sort of like quote unquote constructive criticism, is that maybe the writing of both of these roles could have been a little bit better, just a little bit, like even just a little bit, because they're like both
Yeah.
of these roles, I felt like were very bare bones.
But we've seen what good actors can do with bad writing. And you're going to love this. You're going to jump for joy. Adam Driver, Force Awakens, and the other one. We don't talk about the other one. He did a lot with terrible writing, and he made that, like, to me, the thing that stands out the most in the new trilogy is Adam Driver as Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, nothing really stands out. I mean, Harrison Ford was very lackluster, and I get it because he was on the way out, and Carrie Fisher unfortunately had an untimely end. I feel like she would have went the distance with the film. But yeah, just this terrible writing for Kylo Ren, but Adam Driver really made it just impact. Like, it felt amazing. Like, he gave an amazing performance. If you're a good actor, bad writing hinders you but doesn't stop you. And I feel like Adam Driver's the poster child for that.
Right. Well, I think what you're trying to get at is like, if you can understand the idea of what your role is, you've got it, no matter what the writing is. Because you can just kind of sort of have that internal mentality and thought process going to the back of your mind. And as I mentioned earlier, just kind of like live in that moment. And that's what I think, such as like Mark Wahlberg and Mel Gibson have done in their roles this past year, is that granted, those films had excellent writing. They understand the point of the scene, and they're going to live, and they're going to have like this very honest connection, and really just kind of, I hate to be recapitulating myself, but really just live and show a little slice of life,
right?
Basically,
and at points you could make that Chavez was the leading role. Like, you can make that legitimate argument because of how important she was in terms of like teleporting in the story with Scarlet Witch, but the acting, like, you should recognize how important you are in certain scenes and kind of take charge. And I don't know if it's just because she's young, first appearance in a Marvel film. I don't know what it is.
Right.
But it was just so lackluster. Like, I feel like, I don't know, different actress, maybe this role would have hit differently for me. Different writing would have obviously definitely hit better for me. But I don't know. I just felt like she didn't do a lot with a role that had, honestly, a lot of potential.
Right.
Like, because the Chavez character was a big focal point of the film.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess it really just comes down to just getting in the mindset of the character and just writing in general. But you only really have control over one of those things.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, you
can either say words on page or say words on page.
Right.
You get the idea behind my.
But it depends about the director.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe it's a lot of it just didn't have freedom to say, I don't really think this fits my character. And I don't know. There's a lot of variables that need to be considered, and I don't have them all. Right. And if I did, maybe I'd change my thought. Right. But just with what I have, did not enjoy the performance.
Well, in terms of Marvel, there's only so much they can do because it's a franchise. In terms of X, yeah, it's going to be a trilogy, but there's a little bit of leeway.
Right.
So.
Well, the problem with Marvel is a franchise, yes, but you can do whatever you please in the multiverse. Yeah. You can go to Narnia.
Which we'll talk about hopefully on a later podcast, but I want to talk more about, good acting.
Yes, let's get into something positive, please.
So here we go. Here's my green actor.
Yes, best actor of the year.
Green actor. I think you're going to really appreciate this one, Brian.
All right.
It's Nicolas Cage playing Nick Cage in the unbearable weight of massive talent.
Let's go, Nick Cage.
Like, this movie is so meta, but there's just a way that Nick Cage just like will now exist as Nick Cage forever on film. And I just love the way that Nick Cage doesn't take himself seriously at all in this movie, but also takes himself seriously enough to the point where you're like, I believe that this man is a freaking human being on Earth. Like, great.
And you say that, and now that I think about it, Pedro Pascal was a serious consideration for Best Supporting Actor.
Oh, absolutely.
But this, in 2022 and into 2023, with the Last of Us series, he's really been a breakout star for me.
Oh, for sure.
Personally, with Mandalorian and Last of Us, and then obviously with Unbearable Talent.
Yeah, but I just love the way Nick Cage really just goes full on in this role, and also just like his cameo appearances as some of the other roles he's done, and also just like the rock star. It's like, what is this?
It's
What is going on here?
The statue of himself.
Oh my God!
Like,
Yes.
What does he say? It's like it's terrible or it's horrendous.
Horrendous.
I'll give you $10,000 for it. So
Right.
that's the best.
It's absolutely horrendous. I'll give you $10,000 for it. It's just great. It's great.
It's so Nick Cage.
Yeah.
It is. Oh.
It was a no-brainer, but I did have a few other considerations. But Nick Cage, just right there, I was like, you know what? That was my favorite. My favorite acting moment is the one you just described with the statue. Like, that was great. Like, I admit I saw it in the trailer. I'm just like, I'm all in on whatever this movie is gonna be. There's
so many moments like where he's trying to climb the wall and he gets to the other side and he's like, "Leave me, go without me." Pedro Pascal's like, and then they just walk around. There's so many moments where Nick Cage is just like. Just blows it out of the water with his performance.
Absolutely. Nick Cage is one of the best talents in Hollywood right now, honestly. He should get more credit.
I've seen some terrible movies that he's been in, but going back to the whole bad writing, good actor, he's really shined in a lot of those.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyways, we can talk about Nick Cage all day. Brian, what do you got for the Green actor?
I'm glad I didn't pick Nick Cage. I really did. He was in consideration, but I really thought about it, and my best actor was Mark Wahlberg.
All right.
And Father Stu.
All right.
I just enjoyed everything about it. How he portrayed the character's change in attitude, look on life. You know, he really portrayed the emotions.
Yep. Which we definitely touched on earlier with the cinematography and editing.
100%. Like, it was just fantastic, all of that. And I think his performance in this was elevated by a supporting cast. But he shined as the main role, the star of the film. I think that's tough when you have a cast like he did, especially with Mel Gibson, who's been the lead role, like I stated before. But he shined. It was amazing. And coming off of films where very lackluster, like Transformers, it was great to see him kind of enjoy a resurgence of great leading role where he steals the show in this film.
Yeah. I mean, you and I felt every single emotion in the theater. Like, we saw this movie at like a 9 o'clock screening. We wish we saw it at 6 o'clock so that we could have bought another ticket for the 9 o'clock showing. It was that great.
It's very rare that we see a movie and then we immediately say, I want to see that again.
Right.
Like, this and maybe just this is the movie that we like, the credits were rolling and it was like, I really want to see this again. Like you said, I wish we hadn't.
Last Duel.
Last Duel. Okay, Last Duel. Yeah. Okay, so last year's for me was Last Duel. That was the Last Duel year for me.
There's always like one or two that are just like, I got to see this movie again.
You're right. Last Duel was more about finding details.
Yeah, for sure.
Father Stu, I just wanted to watch again.
Yeah,
I just
it's a great movie.
I just enjoyed it so much, and a lot of that was Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah.
Like I said, just the way that he made us feel every emotion humanly possible.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And
it's a passion project too. For him.
It's great. You know, he makes you laugh, and then in the beginning, and then you slowly grow with him, and you feel sadness and sorrow, and then anger and depression, and all of this, and then at the end you feel at peace and joy. It's amazing just how I really didn't know how versatile Mark Wahlberg was as an actor until this film, honestly.
Yeah. He's a very serious actor, and I think a lot of people really don't give him the credit he deserves for what he does with his acting capabilities.
No.
He's just, unfortunately, he's been in these franchises where it's like he's just glued to like a typecast, basically, if you will.
Right. And unfortunately for the past couple years, like I said, it's been Transformers, and it's nice to see him finally get that role that breaks away from that typecast.
Right.
It's just great. And I feel like we're getting that with a lot of people. Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
He broke away from the typecast that he was in.
Yeah.
It's just great to see.
Yeah. Speaking of someone else who's kind of breaking away from, not necessarily typecast, but just like getting more like recognition and breaking into the mainstream, is my Green actress, who I'm going to give to Anya Taylor-Joy, who played the role of Margot, or Margot, as sometimes they say, in the film The Menu. And I really enjoy how you were mentioning in your take on Mark Wahlberg that he just shines, and I think she certainly shines in this movie. She's definitely an outsider, and I think that really just is illuminated by just how everybody is very similar in that like rich kind of vibe, and she's definitely not from that world. And I think it's something that like you might not notice immediately, but as the story progresses, you get a sense that like she is understanding her place and what she can do to kind of like overcome the rich aspect. I mean, this film really is definitely a commentary on class in society. I feel like it's definitely a black comedy for sure. It fits in that genre, but her portrayal is just like it should have been nominated for an Oscar in my opinion. Honestly, should have because it's that impactful and it really resonated with me as I left the theater because in certain times of my life I felt that kind of like outsider kind of vibe as well. So I just really resonated with that writing and the way that she portrayed the character as well. So
Yeah, I mean, Anna Taylor-Joy, I think, for me, Northman was not a good experience for me, but she was pretty good in that movie.
yes,
I think in terms of her emerging onto the scene, I think you nailed it right on the head. I think she's really coming into her own in terms of the film
yeah,
category because she was in a few TV shows, if I'm not mistaken, too, that
correct.
never really took off.
Yeah, she was also in the New Mutants as well, which was that horror X-Men movie. Wasn't great, but I did enjoy her portrayal because I think it really demonstrated how much she could act with little writing or little material to really work with, and I really appreciate it as well. As we're talking about, writing and what makes good writing, what makes good performances from bad writing. So.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I did touch upon how she was in TV shows that never really took off. I would like to point out that she was in The Queen's Gambit, which she gave great performance in.
That's right. I forgot
Yes.
she was in that.
Yeah,
yes.
I just want to touch on that to make it seem like you make everybody know that. I know that she was in The Queen's Gambit, and she was great in that. You need to go back into her repertoire. She didn't really break out in her TV roles up until that point. But yeah, she really got a lot of recognition from that, which was great to see. And then she's just been great up until The Menu, and she was in Amsterdam,
Yep.
which we enjoyed.
Yep.
So yeah, she's really been come out of nowhere, great story.
Absolutely. Yeah, usually you find great people that just come out of nowhere, and it's just amazing to see what they do. So,
100%.
So
Usually some of the best, I think the best actors and actresses we've found have been people who really were unknown until a certain role, and they just took off to the moon.
That's why they call it your breakthrough role for.
There it is.
So
Mark Hamill.
Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher.
Anybody in Star Wars?
Oh man. But anyways, Brian, who are you picking for your Green Actress?
All right.
So I know it's not Anya Taylor-Joy. I know it's not.
It's not. It is not. This one was a conversation we had prior to the podcast about when this movie was released. But mine is Mariana Trevino from A Man Called Otto.
Oh.
And she was great in this film. I really enjoyed her performance along with Tom Hanks, who I'm not the biggest fan of anymore. I liked his older stuff like Forrest Gump and
Toy Story,
which, ooh. But yeah, I just thought that she played I really thought about it. Was she a supporting actress or was she a lead? And I really thought about her as a lead in this film. With how she interacted with Tom Hanks, she took charge. She kind of commanded the scene she was in with Tom Hanks, which I can imagine is not an easy thing to do. And everybody's like, strong Latin female, hoorah. I'm just happy that she was a strong role, that she broke out and really made all the scenes she was in with one of the greatest actors known of all time in Tom Hanks. She shined in those scenes, and I thought that was great.
Nice.
So I think that is great for her. I'm hoping that she does more things either with Tom Hanks, because they seem to have great chemistry, or on her own where she can continue to shine.
Gotcha. I have yet to see A Man Called Otto, but I hear good things about it, and I'm thinking I definitely want to see it probably sooner rather than later.
Well, you say that because I know somebody who really liked A Man Called Otto.
That's right. And this one we're going to call the Whale Award because my father, he's the whale. He's the best. He's the almighty. He's the greatest man of all time to ever exist. And let me tell you something. This man loved the film A Man Called Otto.
Yes, he did. When we asked him about his thoughts on A Man Called Otto, he rated the film as a delicious little nugget. Enough said about that. Honestly, enough said.
Yeah.
That is probably the highest rating that The Whale could ever give.
Yes. He also said this is probably Tom Hanks' best role next to Forrest Gump.
Then that's a hot take.
Yeah.
So, but I honestly am in agreement with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was just a great portrayal of Otto and a man who couldn't accept getting older. It was just great. He gave a great performance, and I think The Whale obviously saw that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Whale sees all. Speaking of Tom Hanks, the Red Button Award for Worst Actor for me goes to Tom Hanks.
Really?
Yes, and this is...
Hold on. After all this praise we just gave a Man Called Otto.
Yes.
And you're going to give him the Red Actor.
And here's why.
Okay.
Elvis.
Oh, I forgot about that. Okay.
There it is. I'd like to point out in my notes, I put Worst Actor, Tom Hanks, in parentheses, Elvis. Like that a Man Called Otto.
Nice.
But yeah, no, I didn't like him in this film.
No.
It was called Elvis. It was not about Elvis. It's about the Colonel.
Yeah, arguably, Brian and I had this discussion when we saw it. If you haven't seen the movie, it opens with about a 5-minute opening of the Colonel basically navigating you through Elvis's life and why he chose Elvis and why he kind of brought Elvis to fame and fortune. And,
and there's some intertwining in there where he narrates over certain points too.
Yeah, absolutely, but it just felt out of place because you just started thinking like, okay, now this film is from the Colonel's perspective, and then you get to scenes in the movie where it's like Elvis and Priscilla, and you just got to question, now how would the Colonel know that? How would that make any sense whatsoever?
Exactly. Like, honestly, like Tom Hanks should have been like, I don't know how the Colonel would know this.
Yeah.
Like, you're Tom Hanks. You can make calls like that at this point in your career. But, I don't know. It felt like a phoned-in performance, honestly. And...
He also just doesn't look like the Colonel to me. It didn't
no,
mesh well.
He looked like Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
He just looked like Tom Hanks in a beard.
Very much.
Like, or would it go, whatever he had. I didn't like him. But yeah, I didn't like the performance in Elvis, which is a shame because I really liked him in A Man Called Otto.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just for me, he didn't do anything for me in that movie at all.
Yeah.
He didn't help Austin Butler, which Austin Butler gave a great performance. Also in my honorable mentions for Best Actor, by the way.
For sure. It definitely was something to really think about, but ultimately I went Nick Cage.
It's hard to argue with Nick Cage.
It really is. It really, like, it was like a heads or tails thing, and I was like, I don't need to flip the coin. It's Nick Cage.
There it is.
So.
There it is. Anyway, who is your worst actor, not Nick Cage?
This one I got to go to John Boyega as King. I don't even know how to say the character's name in the movie. Giselle. That's from The Woman King. Honestly, John Boyega. Again, an awkward performance.
Didn't like him in Star Wars.
Yeah, and I like some of the mannerisms that he portrayed in this role because it really helps, continue the message of the movie that it's trying to basically tell. But ultimately, I just think he's so awkward and out of place. Like, his scenes really don't do a whole lot to build the message of the story, and it's just very odd. Like, I know why he has to be there because history, quote unquote. But for a film called The Women King, he's in the movie for a long time, and I don't know. I think he's a somewhat decent actor given the right material, but this just wasn't it. I don't know. I might have gone with somebody such as perhaps Chadwick Boseman might have been a better fit for this role if he was still alive, but John Boyega, it just wasn't it for me.
Okay. Yeah, no. All right. Moving on to our red for worst actress. I went with Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman from Batman. Didn't like it. She brought really nothing to the film. Not like we had with Anne Hathaway in the Dark Knight trilogy. Or even Halle Berry, for that matter. Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't necessarily like her performance. It didn't make me excited to see her character in the Batman 2, which is ultimately coming in 2025? 26? I forget when they said the year was. I think it's 25.
I think it said 25.
Yeah.
I want to say June 25 is what the initial date was.
I was just going to go with the year, but okay. So, yeah, I'm not excited to see what her character is in this one.
It's just a different portrayal of Catwoman that I just think is so different from the source material that it just kind of doesn't vibe with you.
Yeah, no, I'm not upset with, the difference in portrayal of character. Like, Robert Pattinson wasn't terrible as Batman. He wasn't like Christian Bale. But he was decent in terms of what they try to do with a different Batman. I just don't like her character, and I don't like her acting as the bad character. It was just a mess made in heaven, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, apparently. It wasn't that great of a movie, in my opinion, anyways.
No, I mean, it was a decent movie, but I think we're in agreement with the ending not completing 3 plots.
No.
Like, you have, 2.5, almost 3 hours, I think.
It was 3 hours.
Yeah, you basically have 3 hours to complete 3 plots, and you can't even do that. I understand you're setting up for the next film, and I guess this would be the second film in the DCU, I guess you're calling it, because Flash is the beginning or the end, and then the Batman 2 is going to restart it or whatever. I don't know, whatever James Gunn said. But yeah, it's just, I'm not excited to see her character. I'm not excited to see Catwoman like I would be if it was Anne Hathaway returning as Catwoman. Like, her Catwoman, I think, was perfect. I think the way that they portrayed her and she acted as Catwoman was great. Maybe that's Christian Bale's doing. I don't really know. It's tough to tell with the Batman saga or the character and the arc with everybody. It's just tough to. I don't know. Maybe it's just tough to portray who Catwoman is. I don't know. You watch the animated ones and it seems pretty straightforward. I mean, Michelle Pfeiffer did a great job in the original Batman movies. So I don't know. I think maybe I'm just holding her in higher regards because of Michelle Pfeiffer and Anne Hathaway, and I just didn't like it. Maybe I'll like it down the line when we're eventually probably 3-4 movies in. Who knows? I don't really know. But as of right now, I didn't like her performance as Catwoman, and there was no excitement to see her come back.
If I can just make one additional point off of your comment about, holding them to a higher standard, I think that kind of happens with a lot of these franchises that keep getting rebooted and we're going to start over or do different actors or whatnot, so on and so forth.
Like the Joker case in point.
Joker, Spider-Man, and now Batman. And, honestly, probably most of DC because they're going to start over again.
Yeah, I can't wait for the new Iron Man, whoever that's going to be. It's going to be like, I don't know. I can't even give an actor. I don't even want to joke about it because it's probably going to be like.
It's going to be like Will Arnett. I'm just going to be like, why?
Don't say that. I like Will Arnett, but not as Iron Man.
Yeah, but that's the point. Is it's just they just keep throwing actors into this melting pot. It's just like, why? It just doesn't work.
It's going to be like when they had all the Red Power Rangers come together. We're going to have 27 Iron Mans all on screen. It's going to be none of them are going to be Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, it's like having Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland all on the same screen.
When we all know that Tobey Maguire is the only Spider-Man that's, the best.
Right.
So, no, but seriously, I mean, like you said, when you have Tom Holland, he's bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
Andrew Garfield's number 2, and to me, Tobey Maguire's number 1. I know you and I flip-flop 1 and 2.
Yeah.
It's just generational thing, is what it is. But with Batman, like you said, you're probably right. You hold Batman in the cycle of who it was with Christian Bale and Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer. There's that other one.
Yep.
And then Robert Pattinson into the mix. It's tough. And then you have Catwoman. You have all these amazing actresses who have played Catwoman.
Right. Even just Commissioner Gordon as well.
Commissioner Gordon, yeah.
Like J.K. Simmons' brief stunt in the DCEU. I'd like to see what he could do with that, but, unfortunately, probably won't ever see that.
No, we won't. And that's unfortunate because I feel like he could have, obviously with what he did in Spider-Man, he probably could have been amazing. That's probably one of the only things I enjoyed about the last Spider-Man was his portrayal of this Alex Jones character. It was great. I loved it.
Yeah, it was perfect, honestly. Not perfect was Sosie Bacon's performance in the film Smile, which, if that last name sounds familiar, yes, that is Kevin Bacon's daughter. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know where she got her acting chops from, but it certainly wasn't her father. She I don't even know where to begin with this, and I don't think I'm going to say much about it other than it was just not a great performance. The movie wasn't great. Honestly, I almost had this as my eject award for hype disappointment because this movie was like really on my list to see, and I saw it. I was so disappointed by the way, just the way that they take you through somebody who's suffering from a mental illness through the eyes of the main character is just very odd. I don't know if it's really Sozie's if Sozie's in the wrong or if like the direction was in the wrong, but she just doesn't effectively communicate what that feels like. And I'm somebody who knows a lot of people that struggle with chronic mental illness. I unfortunately do not. So it was very hard for me to kind of get behind her portrayal of that. And so that's why I just got to say, no, it didn't work for me.
Yeah, no, I think it's understandable. I mean, I'm not particularly interested in seeing horror films. This is not my forte.
Mm-hmm.
But the trailers and stuff I saw on TV made that film look pretty decent.
Yeah.
Like, I would watch a review of it. Like that's how it is for me.
Not gonna lie, you saw all the best parts of the movie in the trailer.
I feel like that's how most films are these days.
Yeah.
I mean, we went to go see, like, Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, and we were like, we've seen all of this.
Yep.
So, yeah, I get you. It goes a lot about it really goes back to bad writing, no problem if you're a good actor or actress.
Right.
I mean,
it's really just the mass production. And
yeah.
I think it's like all these films like try to tell like a similar kind of story or a similar kind of execution of a concept. And a lot of times it just falls flat because it's been done over and over and over again.
You say that, and that goes right to my point I was going to jump in and say is, to me, my biggest problem with horror films is they're so, what I like to say, cookie cutter. It's
Absolutely.
always, they have this tried and true formula that they just rinse and repeat. Like, strangely, I like the first and second Saw movies. I don't know why, I just really like them. And then you get, like, 3 through 8. I don't even know how much they're up to. But I hated them, and Jigsaw I didn't like. But, like, those first 2 was, like, they were so different than what was out at the time.
Yeah.
It was, it's just so cookie cutter.
Right. And to further your point about the Saw movies, that like 1 and 2 are 2 vastly different genres of the horror genre.
Absolutely.
One of them is just like almost like a mystery thriller, and the other one is just kind of like you're straight up just kind of like torture thriller, if you will.
Right.
And I think Saw 2 kind of sets the precedent for what the rest of the franchise was going to be.
Right.
But still trying to have that mystery element, and ultimately 3 through, I think they're up to 10. I think 10 is supposed to come out in October of this year.
I won't be seeing that.
And it's all over the place.
Yeah, like I like movies, like I said, Saw 1, Saw 2 was pretty good. Silence of the Lambs for me is like my number one go-to quote-unquote horror movie. I don't know why, I just really like Anthony Hopkins' performance in it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just such a great film all around.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's just, a horror film really has to intrigue me to get me to watch it. And
Right.
it's just, nothing ever
Right.
does that. So, if it was good acting, I might have checked it out. Because, like I said, the commercials, the trailers made it look pretty decent.
Yeah.
Like you had some good jump scares in there
Right.
and whatnot.
And let me be clear, like the concept of tackling this big cultural shift we're seeing in society where we're trying to tackle mental illness and that kind of stuff is great.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it's just really the execution that, for me personally, just wasn't there.
Right.
I thought about 4 different things I would have done differently if I were the one behind this movie, but unfortunately, I wasn't.
Right. I mean, brief mention of the mental illness thing. We talked about this with Spencer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good message. Terrible execution.
Yep.
You didn't have to do that with Princess Diana's character.
Right.
And there are, like you said, there are probably many other ways you could have executed this to get the message across and really make it hit.
Right.
Sounds like her performance didn't do that.
No, it really was lackluster. Like it has promise, and then it just very rapidly dwindles. And by the time you get to the end of the movie, it's like, all right, I really don't care.
Yep.
So
hear that.
Yep. Anyways, speaking of horror movies, let me get you to my best rewind here. This movie I'm about to tell you made me want to revisit the rest of this franchise.
All right.
That movie's Halloween Ends.
All right.
I tell you this, I didn't even finish watching Halloween Ends. I was so disappointed and so unintrigued, so bored. I stopped like an hour and 1 minute into this movie and I said, I don't care what happens. And I think I only saw Michael Myers like twice.
That's
in
probably,
that hour and a half.
from what I've heard, that's all you see.
Pretty much.
I mean, like from what I heard, and I've looked into it, they only have like 10 minutes of Michael Myers.
Yep, that's
and I'm like, okay. So were they building a new Michael Myers? The answer is yes and no.
Yeah.
From what I hear.
Right. So, and I can't even tell you because I didn't watch the rest of the movie, but what this movie did make me realize is how much I appreciate the rest of the franchise, including the 2 movies they did recently under David Gordon Green, but also just the rest of the franchise in its entirety as well. I mean, there's some terrible Halloween movies out there, like H2O, I don't like. Halloween 3, Michael Myers isn't even in it. So it's really just a movie that really made me really appreciate what this franchise has done, not only for just like filmmaking in general, but also just the horror genre in terms of history as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, so for mine, I was kind of split because when I think of franchise, I think of, a good amount of movies and TV shows and whatever. So, I guess my honorable mention for what I'd like to say is Top Gun Maverick. But there's only like 2 movies.
Thought you were going to say Glass Onion, not going to lie.
So, and again, Glass Onion. But there's only 2 movies, and they're not connected. Ryan Johnson, specifically said that.
Right.
So for me, I really thought about it. It's going to be the Batman. And that's not just the movies. I went back and watched like the animated movies, the TV show. I read comics of the Batman. And this was mainly just to see, how the universe of Batman that they're building now compares to when they went through the New 52 and the Rebirth and the original, that kind of stuff, and how they kind of went between the original Batman movies, like the Tim Burton movies, and then they transferred into the newer ones, and then they got into the Dark Knight trilogy. Mm-hmm. How did they handle that transfer? And then the Ben Affleck. Ugh. How did it stack up? And I didn't like it. It didn't get me excited.
Right.
Like when you think of like the original Dark Knight movie, you got excited. You're like, this is cool. This is awesome. And even with Ben Affleck, who I don't like as Batman, for some reason, I don't know why. I can't explain it, but I don't like him. I wasn't excited.
Do you like The Dark Knight Returns? Just to quickly interject. Like that comic story arc or even the animated movie?
Yes.
Okay. So that's kind of what they're going for, more or less.
No, yeah, I got it.
In terms of that, but like it's such an awkward portrayal at
at
that early in a universe. Basically.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of similarities in comic arcs that they just started cherry picking arcs that didn't mesh well.
Correct.
Like had they picked arcs that meshed well, like I noticed a lot of like the Killing Joke references were in this movie. I'm like, why? That sucked. And again, personal preference. I'm sure there's a person maybe that likes The Killing Joke and thought it's the best Batman movie ever made or best Batman arc comic. I don't like it. So it's great, but I don't know. I think it just didn't set the tone right for me as the Tim Burton Batman, the original. Like when it hit, you're like, this is awesome. It's so different than what we've seen. Like you think like Adam West Batman, and then you think of like Tim Burton's Batman. It's like polar opposites.
Right.
And then you think of Christian Bale bringing in like this Batman who is a good mix of the two, really. Like it's crazy to think how Christian Bale and Adam West and they all like share this weird, similarities.
Right.
But I felt like Robert Pattinson did his own thing, which is good, but the universe wasn't there.
Right.
Had the universe been around him, like, I don't know. I just didn't enjoy the people around him and the atmosphere set around him, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah. And I mean, we can get into this on another episode of this podcast here, but the one thing I will say is that I feel like once Tim Burton's Batman came out, every successive director, with potentially the exception of Christopher Nolan, have to go back and rewatch the entire trilogy, but they all basically try to copycat what Tim Burton did.
Yes.
Put their own spin on it, which, cool, awesome, but also not original at the same time.
No, and I did... The things I did like about the Batman was how the fight sequences, especially the first one on the subway station there, felt like I was watching the Arkham Knight Batman games.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I think I said it to you when we were in the theater. I said, this feels like I'm playing the game and I like it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the very little things that I actually enjoyed about the movie and the style of the movie. The cinematography of the movie, honestly, the editing, all that. It was just that those fight sequences felt like I was watching a walkthrough of the Batman games.
Right. Absolutely. And you know what's funny is that like I was kind of excited for what the Batman was going to be. I saw the trailer and I was a little disappointed.
Yeah.
So I almost took the Batman as my eject award for disappointment. But then I thought about it, I was like, I didn't like the trailer, so I can't really do that. But
right, I didn't like you know this, I'm a big Nirvana fan. I did not like the version
that
of
was terrible.
The song that they used. I thought that there were, there's other songs you could use. If you wanted to strip the guitar and stuff, Come As You Are would have been good.
Yeah.
Especially because, like, Batman is, like, he's Batman.
Right. I think that's a better message for the Batman story arc anyways, personally.
Right. It just didn't fit right. Yeah. It really didn't. And, boy, speaking of remixes, we're going to get into the Eject Award, which is disappointed by the hype.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. My pick, Elvis. 150% Elvis. I was so excited for this film because I'm like, it looks good. You got Tom Hanks. Austin Butler was like the method actor of all time. I just read somewhere that he's finally losing his Elvis accent or dropping it, whatever. It's amazing that he sat and he was like, I'm going to learn how to sing and play guitar. Like Joaquin Phoenix walked the line this. Yep. It was great. The when we sat down, we saw an early screening and it had him talking about, how he got prepared, and it showed him in rehearsals. Awesome. And then we got there. And then we watched it. And then Tom Hanks started narrating. I didn't like that.
No.
And then he showed up in some town. And he went to some club. And they started playing a hip-hop remix of Hound Dog. I don't like to leave movies. I almost did.
Yeah.
I didn't like it that much.
Right.
You have a film literally with a soundtrack built into it. It's Elvis. Probably the best music of all time. I'd argue the Beatles, but whatever. But you have a soundtrack built into your movie. Play Hound Dog, great song. Play In the Ghetto. Not really in the ghetto, but whatever.
Right.
You have he has thousands of songs that you could choose, but no, you have to remix it.
Right.
And I get maybe you're trying to hit a new audience. But think about just Las Vegas in general. How many Elvis impersonators there are that idolize his music as it is.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And to that point, maybe Baz Luhrmann is basically trying to mention that, without Elvis, you don't necessarily bridge the gaps in music culture. There's a lot of people our age that really appreciate Elvis's music, and also like our parents and our grandparents' generation who grew up when Elvis was making music.
Yeah.
So maybe he's trying to say that Elvis really bridges the gap between listeners of all ages, and that's why they mixed the actual Elvis song with hip hop beats. I don't necessarily like that either, but I can understand why Baz Luhrmann's doing that in this particular artistic format and approach, but I don't think it works well at all. I think just the film on its own would have been enough.
I'm glad you see it because I was so mad. Like, it's not that I'm mad at the decision or the usage of hip hop. That you use it, fine, but I don't need a remixed version of Hound Dog.
Right.
I don't need a remixed version of Elvis anything. The reason Elvis bridges the gap is because he made so many songs of every genre. Literally every genre you can imagine, Elvis made a song for.
Country, pop, rock, rockabilly, blues, so on and so forth.
Just in the 60s and 70s alone, he probably made a song for, well, maybe not like metal, but every general genre of music. I mean, he definitely hit all three of the main genres back in the day. So I just don't see the need for it. I mean, just thinking about that scene right now, I could see Hound Dog being as it is, the regular song Hound Dog.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
You know, or Jailhouse Rock or something, you know, something with that rock and bass line or something that would have just changed the entirety of it.
Right.
And I was excited. Obviously, I like Elvis. They released a whiskey for Elvis that I tried, and I enjoyed a lot. Like, that's how excited I was about this movie. I'm like, dang, gonna get Elvis whiskey, gonna, you know, see the Elvis movie, gonna enjoy it. And I just, as the movie went on, I just felt so disappointed. And the longer it went on, the more disappointed I felt. And then in the outro credits, they played an Eminem song, and I said, I'm gonna leave now. And I walked out of the theater. I love Eminem. Eminem's awesome. I grew up listening to Eminem. Just didn't fit.
No.
Didn't fit at all.
It doesn't fit the vibe. When you think Elvis, you're thinking like members of the $1 Million Quartet, Sun Records.
That's
obviously
it.
like 60s and 70s era. You're not thinking like, Eminem, T-Pain, Casey Musgraves, Slipknot, so on and so forth.
No, even the newer guys. Like, I love Jimmy Allen. I don't need Jimmy Allen in this.
No.
And he wasn't. But that kind of stuff. Kane Brown. Don't put Kane Brown in here. I don't like Kane Brown. But it's the fact of the matter is, you look at movies like Walk the Line. You get excited for Walk the Line,
right,
because it's the $1 Million Quartet. We heard nothing of the $1 Million Quartet at all. No Johnny Cash. No Jerry Lee Lewis. And omitting Jerry Lee Lewis, I can understand.
Right.
But Johnny Cash is so iconic. How can you... And those two were so interlinked, especially, unfortunately, with the drug things.
Right.
But seriously, Walk the Line is like... We went in there going, we're going to rate this on a scale of 1 to Walk the Line.
Yeah.
And we did.
Solid 1.
Solid 1. And that's nothing against, I guess... No, it is. But it's nothing against Austin Butler.
Right.
Austin Butler, and I'm blanking, I'm sorry for whoever played Priscilla in this movie. But she was fantastic. It's just awesome to think about how those two stood out to me in a movie that was just so disappointing. Because I was hyped to see it. I was really excited. Considering Walk the Line for us is one of our favorite films, especially because it's a music-related film, and we love country music, we love old rock, new rock, metal, and Elvis is a catalyst for the rock, jumpstart in America.
Mm-hmm. By the way, just to point out, Brian, Priscilla Presley was played by an actress by the name of Olivia DeJean.
Thank you.
Yep. And also, to your point, I'd like to mention, like, you don't get Johnny Cash, you don't get Jerry Lee Lewis, you don't get Carl Perkins. You know who you do get? You get Hank Snow.
Yeah, who is Hank Snow?
Exactly. I like Hank Snow. I, as a country music enthusiast and somebody who really just enjoys country music history, Hank Snow is truly important. But I just don't think he leaves that much of a legacy on Elvis's life to include him in the film.
Oh, yeah. No, it's... I don't know. I think they could have used those scenes to better portray the Sun Records.
Yeah. Because
Sun Records was a big, big part of his
right.
life. Really, it really was. And I feel like we sat there and we're going, they're just going to skip over Sun Records. And they did talk about Sun Records.
Yeah.
But they're like, we're going to skip over the $1 Million Quartet that they literally made a musical for, and they have an album of them just like messing around playing each other's songs.
Right. And also not to mention the fact that, and I hate to keep juxtaposing this film to Walk the Line, but Walk the Line features a lot of the $1 Million Quartet in there.
Yeah, no, it really does.
So
I mean,
it boggles my mind.
The soundtrack of Walk the Line features covers of Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis, the entirety of Sun Records, really.
Yeah.
And...
I mean, the first half of the movie is basically just Sun Records and the history of Sun Records right then and there.
And it's awesome. We enjoy that. Yeah. But on that note, I just want to say, rest in peace, Lisa Marie Presley.
Absolutely. That was a terrible loss to start off the new year.
Yeah, and that's... I don't want to say she contributed to the disappointment, because obviously she was very big in promoting this movie. But yeah, she kind of hyped it up. And to be fair, I think about a lot of her hype was for Austin Butler, not the movie.
Right.
So in that regards, I say, Lisa Marie, you did a great job in promoting Austin Butler's portrayal of Elvis. So hats off, congratulations, and rest in peace, obviously.
Yes. Yes, indeed. I don't have much more to say about Elvis, honestly, other than I hope Austin Butler has an awesome career, because I think he's a great method actor and could really, probably rival some of the great method actors of all time.
I would love to see, and if this happens, it'd be great. But I don't know if Joaquin Phoenix would be into it. A Sun Records movie with Austin Butler as Elvis, Joaquin Phoenix as Johnny Cash, and then you obviously find the others to fill in, Jerry Lee Lewis and the rest of the $1 Million Quartet.
Which, by the way, also ripped to Jerry Lee Lewis.
Yeah, Jerry Lee Lewis, rest in peace. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think about all these people that are just innovated rock, and obviously Lisa Marie was a model and she did some singers with her father. Yeah, it's just crazy to think that these people are passing away so rapidly. Right. So it makes you appreciate films like Walk the Line.
Yeah.
And honestly, of Elvis, at least with Austin Butler's portrayal of Elvis, they make you appreciate just how crazy these people are. Like I'm low key and high key excited for the inevitable Beatles biopic, official biopic, because there's been millions. But yeah, I think it would be interesting to see.
Right. Absolutely. With that being said, Brian, I want to take you to a film that I don't have much to say, but it was definitely a disappointment for sure. That's a film called Moonfall. It came out in like February of 2022, and I remember seeing the trailer and I said, this is going to be like the next biggest sci-fi epic.
It's the one with DiCaprio?
No, this was with Patrick Wilson and Halle Berry.
I don't know what movie this is, sorry.
That's fine. But basically, the concept is the moon falling from the sky, changing Earth, and Earth's probably going to be no longer existent, and they got to fix it.
Pretty self-explanatory.
And let me tell you, this film, oh my God, everything from the direction to the editing to the cinematography, it's atrocious to look at. Patrick Wilson, Halle Berry, great chemistry, awesome performances. Aside from that, though, man, like this film just was terrible. I remember leaving the theater and I was just like, I want to forget that this movie ever exists.
Yeah,
that's how bad it was.
I hear you. I mean, Halle Berry is she's been a center point of our podcast tonight.
Apparently,
Catwoman, Moonfall.
Yeah.
Shout out to her being in John Wick 4 coming out in 2023. I'm excited for that.
Can't wait for that.
But yeah, I mean,
it was at end of March, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, lit. Awesome. Can't wait for that.
So yeah, it just really, goes to show bad movies, good actors, actresses, they stand out. Halle Berry, center point.
Seems to be the motif of our thought process here on this award show.
Absolutely.
And Brian, let me tell you something. I know we're talking about movies that like we probably never want to watch ever again. But let me tell you about a movie I definitely always want to watch anytime I see it or think about it. Best flashback is an immediate rewatch, and that goes to Terrifier 2. I saw this movie 3 times in theaters, and listen, every time I saw this movie, there was somebody that left the theater. But I think my favorite story is the first time I saw it, I was in the back row, and about 8 people came in right before showtime happened, right? And this film is very grotesque. I mean, you probably heard the news stories about people passing out or just throwing up because this movie is just so over the top in terms of violence and gore and everything like that. And so there's a particular scene where somebody basically gets, for lack of description, just mutilated. And what happens is, in the theater, this guy gets up, looks at me, and goes, "Take it easy, brother." And I was like, "Yeah, you too, man." And I had the theater the rest myself the rest of the movie, and I had like another hour and a half to go in the film. So, but Terrifier 2 for me just stands out as not only is it a grotesque and film not for the faint of heart, but I think it really tells a true story here about what it means to be there, this dichotomy of good and evil and heaven and hell and angel and demon, how they kind of coexist. And I think it's just a really cool motif, and I'm really excited to see where this franchise goes, where this story goes. But performances are amazing. Laura Lavera and David Howard Thornton are incredible to watch. It's again, I hate to use terminology, but it's a masterclass in acting, and it goes to show you that even low-budget horror films, I mean, this film was made for like $250,000, can return almost like $14-15 million just based off word of mouth, how great the film is. And the visual effects, too, are amazing. Like, when they have, kills and kill sequences in this movie, it's fantastic. It's all practical. Nothing, I shouldn't say nothing, but like 98% of this film is all practical effects because they didn't have the budget to do like CGI and things like that. So, really impressive, really well put together film. It really makes me really appreciate indie filmmakers and the lengths they're willing to go for their projects.
Oh yeah, and didn't it break? I don't know if it broke a record or it came close to the ratio for cost to make and then box office totals.
That I'm not sure of, but I know it definitely is up there with
Yeah,
its
I was
number.
gonna say, like you said, it cost very little and it made a lot just by simply word of mouth.
Yeah, and I mean, they were only asking, I believe, for like 20 or 25 grand on an Indiegogo campaign, and within like 24 hours they had the 250,000. They were just like, oh, okay, so they're gonna go all in on the movie. So
For sure.
yeah, shout out to Indiegogo.
Absolutely. All right, so for mine, we finally get to give the greatest movie of all time an award that it deserves. So my film that I wanted to watch again, Top Gun Maverick. Saw it 13 times in the theater.
God bless America.
All in all, I've seen it about 33 times between theater and home viewing.
God bless your wallet.
Thank you, Regal Unlimited. So yeah, no, I
not sponsored
yet. No, but I did enjoy this film. Obviously, the first Top Gun was my favorite movie of all time, and then I saw this movie, and then it became my favorite movie of all time, and then I've watched it like my favorite movie of all time. So, what can you say? Top Gun Maverick.
Nothing will top it.
Top Gun performance. Tom Cruise is the GOAT of action movies.
It's got Top Gun cinematography. It's got Top Gun editing.
It's got Top Gun acting. I mean, it's just Top Gun.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Well, no, it can't be because it's Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah, so I mean, I wanted to give this pretty much everything in here.
Yeah.
But I decided to spread the love because there was a lot of good movies that came out this year. But yeah, this movie was just amazing. It made me want to watch it over and over again, and I did, in every format. I've seen it, like I said, in standard, RPX, IMAX, ScreenX, regular DVD, Blu-ray, 4K UHD. It's the best of all time. Love it. Can't wait for, hopefully, I can't wait to see a spin-off of, like, the Rooster stories. I think that would be awesome because they did a great job of setting up the characters for that.
I think they have a lot of story to tell there.
They do. Whether it becomes like a Paramount Plus TV show, which I hope not, but it probably has the potential to be, or whether it becomes a new franchise, a Top Gun franchise with these new actors and actresses who absolutely dominated in their roles. I'm excited to see where it goes, and I will watch all of them over and over again until they stop making them, and then I would just continue to watch the ones they already made over and over again.
Naturally, of course.
I mean, as one does. So, now that we've talked about the films that we wanted to watch again and again and again, let's talk about the films that just dragged on. And that's our Fast Forward Award. Now, for me, I gave this one a lot of thought and consideration, and there was really only one that I landed on.
Doctor Strange.
No.
Oh, okay. That was my guess. I'm sorry.
It was not. My film is The Northman.
Oh!
Boy, did I not like this film.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that now. You almost thought about leaving like halfway through that movie.
I did. Right about the second act. When it started to feel like the movie was never going to end.
Yes.
There were just a lot of stuff I didn't need in that film. Specifically in the second act and pretty much the entirety of the third act.
Yeah.
Didn't enjoy it, which is a shame because I like Nicole Kidman.
Yep.
You
were good with the part where it ended, though, right?
I like the end credits.
Okay.
I like
cool.
the beginning credits.
Yep.
And I liked going home.
Yep.
That's about it.
Yep. Didn't like everything else in between that.
I will say, like, the first act was great.
Yeah. Good setup.
The pacing was good. The setup was good. The acting was good. And then it got to the second act. And it started strong.
Yep.
And then it did. It really faded about halfway through the second act. And then the third act, I'm sitting there and I'm going, I want to go home and eat some, like, pretzels or something. Yeah. Because this is boring. Yeah, it I don't know. I just don't ever want to watch that again, and I felt like it just dragged on for eternity.
Right. And I'm not hating on Robert Eggers here, but I don't understand sometimes how he has great starts, and then I don't understand where he ends up.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense to me. Like, the roadmap, I don't know if I missed something or we just took a hard left for no reason, and that's fine, but...
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like Norse mythology
Yeah.
is great. Like, it's cool to look into and understand what they did. But like, if you give me a movie with some Vikings going to England and raiding people, I'm good. Basically, what they did, they killed a couple Christians, and then they called it a day. But yeah, no. If I don't know, I don't know if I wasn't a fan of the mythology aspect that he put into it. I don't know if it was the pacing. It definitely was the pacing. The pacing in the halfway through the second and through the third was just terrible.
Yeah. Well, there's that one like 5-10 minute scene. It feels like where they're like in a cabin or something like that. It's not really a cabin. It's more like a hut.
Oh yes, I know what you're talking about.
I think it's like the main character, I forget his name, and his brother.
Yes, yes.
And it's just it's so expositionary when you don't need the exposition because you already have the background, and it just really takes you out.
Right. I feel like all the setup that they did in the first act, they didn't need further explanation in the second and third act. Like maybe you have a little bit, more building in the first quarter of the second act, but I don't need any more than that. Start building your characters. Start giving me some, important things that are happening. I feel like that movie could have been shorter.
Yeah.
If they cut out half the second act and really thought about what they did wrong in the third act and changed it, I'd have been okay. But I feel like that movie was like 2.5 to 3 hours long, and it could have been done in about 2 hours.
Yeah, so it clocks in at 2 hours and 17 minutes. You probably honestly could have done that in like an hour 40.
God, that felt like 3 hours. Yeah. There you go. That's why I gave it the award. Felt like 3 hours.
Big facts.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't want to talk about it anymore. So, Colin, what you got?
Okay. Similarly, another historical film that just dragged on was Medieval this year. And honestly, I don't remember what happened in Medieval. I mean, I really don't. I don't remember. But I just remember Michael Caine was in there, and this film, within 5 minutes, it was like a full stop. And I just wanted to fast forward to the good parts of this movie. There were none. I think I literally have this in my phone as like a solid, 2 out of 10. Like, that's how bad this movie was. As I said, I really don't remember what was in, but I'll tell you the truth. Don't watch this movie. It sucked. Brian, I believe you saw that movie with me, right?
I did. I didn't like it. It's about a mercenary who kidnaps a lady, the noble lady, and somebody falls in love. I didn't like it.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Spoiler alert, but you're probably not gonna watch the movie, so it doesn't really matter.
No.
Isn't this the one where the girl kills herself in the last 5 minutes of the movie?
I don't know.
She's on the top of the castle thing, and then she just falls over and snaps her neck into the shallow water.
That might be it.
I think this is the one.
I don't really know. I kind of zoned out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, coming off of The Last Duel last year, which was one of the best films I've ever seen. I don't want to speak for you, but we had high hopes for a medieval, Middle Ages kind of setting movie. Yeah. And with a title called Medieval, I said, oh, this could be good.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
It certainly was not. Another thing, too, I'd just like to mention about Medieval, and I just think I just think it's very bleak and just visually just oversaturated, overproduced. There's just a whole lot not going on in this movie.
It only made $1.3 million in the box office for USA.
What was the budget?
A lot more than that, I guarantee it. I mean, it's crazy.
Oh, it was $20.3 million, but it made $50.6 million in the Czech Republic. So,
okay,
technically it broke even.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, because it was the HRE. And it was a lot.
Actually, wait. When you consider the conversion of Czech Republic money, I don't remember what currency they used, but it did not make it didn't make even. No, the budget in Czech Republic money is $500 million, and it made, like I said, $50.6 million. So
okay, I mean, it makes sense that it would do better over in Europe, specifically Czech Republic, but I mean, it was taking place in the HRE, the Holy Roman Empire,
right.
So it makes sense that Germany, Czech, it's their area. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. For the runtime listed as 2 hours and 6 minutes, it felt like 17 hours of boredom.
It did. I couldn't wait for that movie to end. And again, you usually go to late showings, so I think this one was a 10:10 movie, and by probably 10:30, I just I'd like to go to sleep now.
Yeah, which I hate to come back to The Last Duel, but we went to like a 10/10 showing of that, which is like a 3-hour movie, and we thoroughly enjoyed all of it. It was a great movie with great pacing, and this movie had none of that.
Right.
Obviously, we can't even remember the plot.
Yeah,
Like I remembered the mercenary, and I think his brother was there.
Yeah.
And like he kidnapped some lady.
yeah,
and,
something like
and
that.
then somebody falls in love with somebody, and then he's got to he gives something to his nephew, like a necklace. I don't know.
It's a very generic historical epic plot.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the History Channel. No offense to the History Channel. The History Channel made this movie. Like they were just like,
yeah, it feels
sword, armor, war.
It feels very Vikings-esque when you really think about it.
Yeah, but not like good Vikings.
No,
like the show Vikings. I want to point out is great.
Great show.
This is not great.
No. This is like Vikings light.
Yeah, you're right. It is like Vikings light.
Shout out to beer. Anyways, I don't want to talk anymore about Medieval.
I don't either.
I can't believe we talked that long about Medieval.
Nah, speaking of films we don't want to talk about ever, we get into the Stop Award, which is the worst film of the year.
Can I go first?
Yeah, go for it, dude.
Everybody loves this movie, and I legitimately left the theater. I didn't like this movie at all. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. I will tell you, I have no idea what the hell was going on in this movie. I have no idea. I watched about 45 minutes of this movie, and I said, I have no idea what's going on. I'm leaving the theater. So I left the theater.
I've never even heard of this movie.
couldn't even tell you what was going on in this movie. And Brian, it's nominated for like 11 Oscars. I can't believe you never heard of this movie.
I've never heard of it, but
yeah,
it's got great ratings on Rotten Tomatoes.
Essentially, what I gather is like it's kind of like this woman is visited by like some sort of like spirit entity, and she's gonna go through like a variety of universes so she can appreciate life more. That's the vibe I was getting from what I watched.
Okay.
Don't know. Kind of sounds like Doctor Strange because it kind of felt like Doctor Strange. So I was like, legitimately, like 45 minutes in, I could not tell you what was happening in the movie. It was so experimental. I'm just like, I can't do this right now. So
I can't do this right now.
So
now let me ask you, if you revisit it, you said right now.
Don't want to.
Okay, I just want, because you said right now, I wanted to see if it was like maybe something.
So honestly, I'm thinking like 10 years down the road, I'll probably like revisit it and probably will still have the same reaction. But I don't know, like it just, I couldn't grasp what the story was trying to go for. I couldn't, and I'm just like, I'm completely lost. I have no idea what's going on.
All right.
The other film that I could have given this award to, just real quick shout out, was The Mean One, which was like the Grinch parody. That was like a horror comedy.
Oh, I heard about that. I didn't see it.
It was.
Want to.
I left the theater as well.
Okay.
It wasn't great. The the editing and cinematography was terrible. The CGI terrible. Like somebody, I forget who, shot somebody, and they had like PS1, PS2 kind of blood like squirt out of them, and it was just like, whoa, this is terrible. I can't.
That's great.
I think I left like a half hour into that movie, and it's like an 85-minute long picture.
That's amazing.
I was like, okay, awesome.
That's great.
I should get an award just for that.
That's amazing. I mean, I couldn't. I don't know how I would handle. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, you mentioned a certain film.
Yep.
My worst film. It got changed.
Oh.
It's now Doctor Strange.
Oh. What did you originally have it as?
The Northman, because it
All
sucked.
right. It did suck.
Doctor Strange kind of sucked a little bit more, and not because of the acting, a little bit, but I don't know. I don't like it. I really I've been sitting here thinking about it, and I didn't like the story.
Yeah.
And my elaboration on the Chavez character, I didn't like it.
Right.
So I don't know what this movie was supposed to be about. Was it about Doctor Strange? Was it about American Chavez? Was it about Scarlet Witch? I don't know.
I think it's a world building kind of movie where they're trying to set up this multiverse to build to like a Secret Wars adaptation.
Great. How do you build up to everything and anything as possible?
I don't know.
Exactly.
But you got to use everything everywhere all at once for sure.
Well, that movie sucks. Yeah. So no, but I was legitimately thinking about it, and I'm like, the Northman sucks.
Yeah.
But Doctor Strange sucks in the matter of everything. Like, and everything being the Disney universe. It's terrible. It sets up just awful possibilities that you don't want to happen.
Right.
Why is Jim from The Office Mr. Fantastic?
Who knows? Why is Patrick Stewart back as a Professor X that is not the Professor X we know him as?
Why was he in a taxi wheelchair? I mean, it looked like a taxi. It did. It was a questionable paint scheme.
It did.
You know, give me the old school X1, X2, X3 wheelchair with literally the X wheels. That was cool. Liked it. Dug it.
Why is Peggy Carter Captain America? I don't understand.
I don't know.
Understand.
Why was Captain Britain needed here? Wasn't. Don't need Captain Britain. I don't know. I just felt like there were so many other ways that they could have went. And I don't know.
I also just feel like there's definitely a lot that was left on the cutting room floor that could have potentially helped this movie. Maybe. I don't know. Or maybe like I don't want to hate on Sam Raimi here, but maybe Sam Raimi wasn't the choice to make this kind of movie. Like he's definitely good with horror, but perhaps this just wasn't it for him. Like
no, like the forced cameos,
yeah.
I didn't like.
No. And like the forced attempts at like some horrific quote unquote grisly elements with like Zombie Strange.
Yeah.
They just fall flat.
No, and I'm gonna bring TV shows briefly into this. You want to talk about an adaptation of bringing a semi, lighthearted, whatever you will call it, world into a darker world? Mandalorian. You know, in the films, you always see like Star Wars as this. You know, you got the Sith and the Jedi, and they're light and dark, good and evil, but it's never really like dark, like killings in the street. The Mandalorian kind of gave us that gritty undertones of what Star Wars is underneath all of that. And I think maybe that's what he was going for in this, especially coming off of Spider-Man, which was like a wholehearted I don't want to say family, but family in air quotes film. You know, this feel-good moment with all three of the Spider-Men together and they're having fun and joking. I don't know. I didn't like it.
But let's also consider the fact that because of the pandemic, Spider-Man was finished first because it was made on American soil and we didn't have to have people travel all over the place.
Right.
And Doctor Strange was a quote-unquote European picture. So because of that, they finished Spider-Man first. So originally we were supposed to get Doctor Strange and then Spider-Man.
Wouldn't have helped.
It really wouldn't have.
Actually, I think it would have made it worse.
Probably would have.
In all honesty, it probably would have made it worse.
Yeah.
But
that's why some references in Doctor Strange don't really work.
No. But, you think about, like, the scenes in Spider-Man, which it just wouldn't have hit different.
Right.
Which, I don't know, maybe if they had Doctor Strange come out first, it would have gotten no Ned. Boy, would that made my life so much better. No offense, guy that played Ned, but your character, not great.
Right.
So, yeah, Doctor Strange gets the worst film for me.
Cool.
Sorry, not sorry.
Before we move into the Best Pick Awards, I want to mention a few picks that I could have had for the Pause Award, but didn't ultimately pick. And those would be Don't Worry, Darling, and Olivia Wilde, fantastic director for this one as well. Honestly, was a shoo-in for Best Power, or for the Power Award, until I really thought about what David Cronenberg did in that movie, so that's why I went with him. My 4 here that I have for Best Picture that I ultimately didn't give it to would be She Said. Jesus. She Said, Dog, Men, and Amsterdam.
Gotcha.
That's really funny to say all together in one sentence. Wow. Okay. All right.
It's a whirlwind, man. I tell you what. No, Olivia Wilde's great. I mean, I'm glad that she's getting her, recognition in directing rather. Right. She was great in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that was her first like big breakout role, but for me, that's the first role I think of with her.
I think that is technically her breakout role.
Right. The two roles I think of is Pirates and House.
Yep.
She was great in House. But yeah, I mean, it's great to see that she's finally getting, like I said, the recognition for directing. So
yeah.
I hope she keeps up with it.
Hell yeah.
Because she was great in Amsterdam.
Absolutely.
So, and I don't know if she was given director's credit on that. I don't think she was. I think she was just an actress in that.
I believe she's just an actress, yeah.
So,
yeah.
She's a great actress. She's obviously a good director, so.
Yeah. And she also did, what was a couple years ago, the film about the two teenage girls who are nerdy and do something. Oh, Booksmart.
Gotcha.
That was a great
I was
movie.
going to guess Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. That wasn't right.
Nope.
All right.
Not that long ago, Brian.
Gotcha. I don't have any honorable mentions except Top Gun Maverick, which is the best film ever made. However, the Pause Award for best film for me goes to Father Stew this year.
Ooh.
I know.
I was really expecting Brian to say Top Gun Maverick.
And I kind of
really was.
I kind of did.
Yeah.
When thinking about what is the best film of 2022, I thought about the more technical aspects, the story, how all of the actors and actresses were, and how everything just came together. Now, Father Stew for me is not something I could sit and watch 33 times because it's a bit of a movie.
Right.
But it was just a great experience, especially that first experience, and I watched it again at home. Great experience at home as well. But it's a lot to take in. It's a big. I think the best way I could put it is it's a big emotional hit. Like we talked about how they hit on every emotion in that film and make you feel every emotion, and it just takes a lot out of you to watch that film.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's, in my opinion, the best film of this year. In terms of everything, the editing, the cinematography, the performances, the soundtrack, all of it is great.
So, like, cohesively, it all just kind of melts together, and you can't just single it out for, like, every single award, basically.
Right. I can't. I think I could easily give this movie every award this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was that good. But a culmination of all of the things that we think about what makes a movie good, this movie did it and then some. Like, on a 10 out of 10, this would honestly be like the only movie I could realistically, not like for the joke of like Maverick, give this an 11 out of 10 because it was that good. If you haven't seen it, I feel like you have to see it at least once in your life.
And you definitely want to watch the R-rated cut.
Yes.
I know Sony did a recut. I think they subtitled it Reborn as a PG-13 rating.
Yes.
And I didn't see it, but I think that would severely detract from your experience.
Yeah, we talked about going to see that, and I think I bounced back and said, I don't know, I just don't think it'll be the same, and you said I agree. So we didn't see the PG-13.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did revisit the rated R, and still a great film. Still hit all of the check marks that I like when watching a film, and then some.
For sure. And I think it's cool too that you point out that like it could have won every single award, but these films that we've chosen do, I guess I should say, either really good and excel at one particular thing or not.
Right.
Right. But then you have films that's like it's great at everything it does, and that's why it's a great film.
Yeah, I mean, like Top Gun Maverick. I mean, all of the shots of like the interior shots of the plane, the acting, the music in that film is great. But there were other films like, unfortunately, Doctor Strange didn't have a lot going for it, with the exception of the visual effects. Thor didn't have anything going for it but that awesome soundtrack, which Guardians of the Galaxy is essentially what it is.
Right.
But, there's just all of that into consideration. Father Stew did all of that in just every way that I could imagine. So, yeah, that's where mine's at. And I will say it was very close between Father Stew, surprisingly, Glass Onion. I think if we had like a surprise of the year, it would have been Glass Onion for me.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, probably Father Stew would have won it because we didn't know what to expect going to see Father Stew.
Right. I mean, we saw the trailer. It said looked good, and we were like, all right, Mark Wahlberg, love Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch,
Yep.
some good vibrations.
Absolutely.
And
Ate out Wahlburgers in Atlantic City, was not disappointed.
was not disappointed. Also found out they will give you alcohol to go. That's also a plus. So, anyways, you can imagine what our trip in Atlantic City was like if you really enjoy our podcasts. But yeah, it definitely is just something that you wouldn't expect, and I think it's a really impactful film. I think that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, it definitely came out of nowhere, in a good way.
Right.
It was definitely something that we weren't sure what to expect, and boy did it like exceed our expectations, and just, you know, I don't even know. I don't even know how to explain how good this movie was. It's really that good.
Right.
I don't know. I don't have anything else to say, honestly, because I can't do the movie justice. But the best thing I can say is go see the movie, the rated R version. You will not be disappointed. You don't have to be religious or whatever to see this movie. I think the message is there for everybody.
Right. I certainly agree with that.
Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, I felt every single emotion possible with this movie.
Yep.
So.
I mean, we were dying laughing in the first part, you
Yep.
know, and then it was pretty serious, and then you were like, you know, laughing again, and then you were like kind of sad, and then you were angry, and then you were like,
then you were very happy, and then
yeah,
you're about to cry the next minute.
Your eyes
and
out.
you're like,
It was so much going on. It was awesome. I mean, never. I mean, I can say this honestly. I don't think in a movie I've experienced every emotion like I did with Father Stew. Absolutely. I really don't.
No, exactly. And I really enjoy how you mentioned that there really are films that just stand out.
Yeah.
For one particular reason or another. And for me, my pause award is going to go to The Banshees of Inisherin. And because I just think, like you mentioned about Father Stew, this film does everything on a great scale. It's like I could have given this film every single possible award in our award show here tonight, and I didn't, because this film just excels in a variety of directions, from acting with Colin Firth, and also to the direction and the editing and the sound design, the score, just the overall visual effects, and just the way the film brings you into what the Irish Civil War looked like for a certain group of people. And I tell you the truth, I'm from Irish heritage as well. And growing up, my grandparents had the Irish brogue, and one of the things I really enjoyed about this movie was that within the first 5 minutes, someone is called a feckin' Egypt, which you can figure out what that's supposed to mean if you don't have the Irish brogue. Let you figure that out on your own. But I'm in the back of the theater laughing, because this is kind of like what I've grown up with and become accustomed to, is because like my grandparents definitely spoke not necessarily with that language, but like with the Irish brogue, and like some things were just like really really weird to say. And it's one of the things I like about semantics, and also just different languages and different cultures. So I think one of the things that really just brought me into the world is just the way that they really said, this is what Ireland looks like, and enjoy, have fun, get accustomed to it, because it's going to be that way throughout this entire movie. And you really just kind of get a sense to learn about what humanity looks like, and how somebody can just like kind of like walk away from it all and just kind of think about what they want to accomplish in life, and why they want to accomplish that in their life when it feels like they're running out of time. And with the backdrop of the war, it really just kind of brings everything together and make you realize how precious life and time is. And I just think too that that's something that really kind of resonates with me. I think I've had a few experiences over the course of my life where I've had the ability to kind of analyze and visualize and kind of make peace with how precious our life on this earth is. And I think that's one of the things that really resonates with me. And the fact that Martin McDonagh is really able to bring you into this 1920s era of Ireland, and just really honestly get a slice of life. And I think that's just really impactful. And the way that he writes his dialogue, and the way that he sets things up, as we were talking about earlier with Ryan Johnson and Glass Onion, there are things in this movie that make perfect sense as the story continues to unfold. It's really cool. It really boggled my mind, and I really just enjoyed the film. A solid 9.5 out of 10 for me. It almost topped Father Stew, but I think there might have been a couple of things lacking with Father Stew, such as like maybe like an edit or two here and there. But I just think that the Banshees of Inisherin really stood out to me, and really just made an impact on all terms in terms of acting and technical
I mean, a
elements.
few things lacking two fathers too, is it?
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
no, that's
I just realized I said the wrong
no,
thing.
I just want to clarify. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the atmosphere that you set, I think, is really, really brought a movie to my mind, and it's not the most like well-known or liked movie for some reason, but the movie Defiance with Daniel Craig.
Yes.
Which it tells the story of three brothers who are, they escape and they're taking refuge in a forest, hiding out from the Germans in World War II. I just think they set a great atmosphere of them kind of hiding and the panic that set in, and it's the way you were telling how they encompass the atmosphere of the Irish Civil War from a certain viewpoint. That really just hit me right there with something that I could think about.
Right, and that's Daniel Craig,
Yes.
Liev Schreiber,
Mm-hmm.
Jamie Bell. I don't remember the other two people that were in this movie. It's George McKay, right? And then
there's a pretty decent cast, but
Yeah.
I mean, let's be Daniel Craig's the main character. He really
Right.
stands out. But yeah, it just the storytelling and the atmosphere and the setting that they put you in is just fantastic.
right, and
I mean, I love those kind of movies.
right, and I mean Edward Zwick has done films such as About Last Night, Legends of the Fall, The Last Samurai, and also co-created the series Once and Again. So he's definitely had quite a bit of talent to work with.
Yes,
So
for sure. Yeah, and yeah, I don't know. I enjoy movies that set an atmosphere in a historical setting. Obviously, which we were lacking this year in terms of medieval and the Northmen.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see a movie that kind of breaks through and says, "Hey, we recognize actual, historical accuracy
Right.
and portray that."
Right. I mean, this film is definitely more so focuses on the dichotomy and relationship of the two central characters, but it's nice to have the backdrop of the Irish Civil War that really helps propel the story and what these characters are going through.
Oh yeah, yeah, and with this, Defiance focuses more on the characters and the people in the camp rather than the overall arcing of World War II. Obviously, they're being hunted by the Germans, but you really get a focus of these people hiding out in a forest encampment that they build. It's just, it's amazing to think like, here you are in Ireland in a civil war, and here you are in Germany, World War II, and you get, pretty similar outlooks on things of like, yes, the focus is on these characters, but there is a world happening around them. There is a conflict occurring. So it's nice to see movies are still kind of portraying that into the 2022, and hopefully 2023 has some good stuff like that too.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I think a lot of people are really looking toward the historical perspective, which is really awesome to see.
I mean, it's nice to see that The Last Duel kind of, for me at least, last year brought a resurgence to a good, so much historical accuracy, because I have some issues with how they said her story is the truth, because it's not officially proven by historians. But I felt like they did a good job at everything else with the exception of claiming her story is the truth. But it was nice to see everything, the atmosphere feel like, the Middle Ages. And it was nice to at least see the Northmen kind of portray the atmosphere of the Norse, the Vikings. When I didn't get the feeling was medieval. I felt like it was like, no offense to people who do this, but LARPing. Live action role play. That's what it felt like. Like, if you ever seen Role Models, it felt like that.
Yeah. It felt just very like carbon copy and just like people who really enjoyed it, but like didn't know how to best like portray it.
Right. I think movies that take, liberties, like The Patriot, nowhere near historically accurate, but portrayed it in a way that was entertaining and is one of my favorite movies. And Gladiator, not the most historically accurate, great film, great writing, great acting, and they put it in a world that was real.
Right.
It's great to see movies are getting more historically accurate and paying more attention to detail. So
I think there's
that
also
continues. Yeah, I just want to say I hope that continues.
Yeah. I think that's really a representation of where we are in modern society as well, where we're paying closer attention to history and how it leaves a legacy behind in a sense.
Yeah. It's a shame that in the United States we see the taking down of history, or trying, I don't want to say trying to erase it, but you look in Europe and Asia and all the continents over the seas, they're preserving that history and saying, it happened, whether good or bad. I mean, you look at, the camps in Germany and Poland, they have them there for a reason, so you can remember what can't happen again and what happened. And then you look in Rome and you say, man, I hope, or I can't wait for this to happen again. So it's crazy that you think about all of this history that's happened, and everybody wants to take the creative liberties with it, when all you have to do is just give the credit to what happened. Because some of the real life stories, like the story of Julius Caesar, the story of even like Winston Churchill, when portrayed correctly, which Churchill did a pretty decent job at, is an interesting story. I'd be really interested to see like an in-depth JFK, or a Lincoln movie was great. I'd like to see more stuff like that.
Right.
Especially U.S. history,
Yeah.
more specifically, like
Right.
a George Washington film that's historically accurate, or a Benedict Arnold film that actually gives his whole story.
I'd even take like a film that kind of traces maybe like the rebellion of the colonies through, maybe like 1780 or 1790.
Yeah, so one of the things I saw that kind of talked about that pre-colonial history and stuff was Frontier on Netflix. Now this is like 1700s. It was starring Jason Momoa, and I feel like he did a great job as, the character in the setting. But the setting was what blew me away. I mean, we're talking 1700s. We're talking about, the fur trade. They're going from the English colonies to Canada, the French colonies, and you have like this awesome mix of like French and English, and you have Native Americans. It's awesome. And I'd like to see a movie kind of attempt that atmosphere, because I can't remember if we had one that does that. I mean, there's been attempts, and then there's stuff like weird things like Back to the Future 3,
Right.
where they tried to do like the old cowboy Back to the Future. No, give me an old school like trader film, like Frontier, but make it into a motion picture.
Right. I mean, like you could argue maybe like I know Chris Pine was in it. Hell or High Water. It's a western, but it's like a new western. Like, and by when I say new western, I mean like it takes the elements of a traditional western, but kind of puts in a different light. Like it's the people against society,
right?
Basically,
which is what a western is,
right?
I mean, you look at all the one. You look at The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. You look at basically every Clint Eastwood western film.
Yeah.
It's all about the people versus society, the government, the
right.
big man.
Right.
That's what that is.
Right. But I mean like new western. I basically mean like it's like think about our current society, and then think about like how you would like try to get away from it. Like think about like classism.
Yeah.
And like think about them like taking on that issue.
Right. I don't know how I feel about that personally.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is what it is. There's a movie out there for everybody.
Right.
There really is.
And that's one of the things I think we've learned in doing this award show, and really just seeing a lot of different movies and talking about the movies we like and hate, and just seeing where we stand as people, but also like what other people kind of enjoy as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's you look at, which is strange because The Whale and I agreed on a movie.
Yeah.
Could have been completely different. He could have said a movie we did not like at all. That just goes to show that everybody has different preferences. Everybody, perceives and portrays movies differently in their minds. So
listen, he could have said Terrifier 2, and I'd have been the happiest guy on the face of the earth.
Well, his initial reaction was Coda. I'd like to point out that came out in 2021.
Yep.
But he saw it in 2022, so it was a valid argument.
It was a valid argument. I appreciate the argument, but ultimately he said, "How about A Man Called Otto?"
There it is.
There you go.
And I'm glad that we decided that movie was indeed out in 2022, because I would have to change some awards.
By the way, some film trivia for you. Man Called Otto came out on December 30th, 2022 in limited release format, wide release January 13th of 2023.
There you go.
So it qualifies.
It barely, it just
Just
makes
barely.
2 days. So that was good. But yeah, I mean, best film for me could have went a couple different ways. Obviously, decided on Father Stu could have easily been Top Gun Maverick because it's the best movie ever created ever in the world.
I could have easily said Terrifier 2.
I thought you were, but that's okay.
I really love that movie. Like, I'm sorry, I was so flabbergasted when I said Terrifier 2, and I tried to explain it, but there's just a lot going on. I don't want to ruin the surprises for everybody, but
Yes.
it's really just a great film. I think it has a great story.
Yeah.
That's that.
Yeah. For me, I think, like, obviously, putting Top Gun Maverick aside, I'd say number one for me is Father Stu. Number two for me is Glass Onion. I think that was a great movie, and I talked about it with Ryan Johnson and the actors and the cast that he had. So, with that, we're all done.
Yeah, those are the awards.
Pretty decent year for movies this year, at least.
Hell yeah. And you can always connect with us. Let us know what you thought about our award show. Let us know your favorite movies, worst movies. Just talk movie history with us as well. That email address you can reach us at is allstarsentertainment18@gmail.com. allstarsentertainment18@gmail.com. Again, is where you can reach Colin and Brian, your host of the All Stars Entertainment podcast. Brian, it's been a fantastic award show with you. Look forward to doing this every single year with you. It was nice to just take a look back and see what was good, what was bad, and we can let the listener know what they should watch and what is All Star Entertainment.
Absolutely. And with that, we have a great year going ahead.
Yeah.
We're excited about the rebrand. We're excited about the new stuff we're going to put out.
Yeah.
So
a lot of new original content coming your way, and also great podcasts. We got a few ideas on the table that we are excited to get out to you very soon in the near future. 2023 is going to be a great year. Absolutely. So with that being said, I am Colin.
I'm Brian.
And this is the All Stars Entertainment Podcast.